Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on applying principles for digital development. And for most of you who attended last year's session, that was an introductory session on the same principles. Today we'll be diving deeper on each of the principles and looking at how and the best ways to apply the principles in our development work. We will be looking at the 9 principles deeper, as mentioned. And to start us off, we'll watch a video about 2 minutes to give us a broader overview of the principles. So welcome.
The Principles for Digital Development are a set of 9 living guidelines to help practitioners implement better technology solutions to development challenges. The principles are meant to help guide the creation of technology-enabled programs and tools so that development organizations can reach more people with life-enabling services more quickly and sustain those services to produce stronger and more sustainable outcomes. The Principles for Digital Development were developed by the digital development community for the digital development community. No matter your organization's size, sector, specialty, or geography, the principles can help you achieve your digital development goals. That's because the digital principles are informed by lessons learned from hundreds of practitioners all over the world. As living guidelines, they are also intended to be updated over time and refined to maintain their relevance as technology and innovation continues to progress. So what are the specific principles? They include design with the user, understand the existing ecosystem, design for scale, build for sustainability, be data-driven, use open standards, open data, open source, and open innovation, reuse and improve, address privacy and security, be collaborative. To learn more about each of them, visit digitalprinciples.org. You will also be able to access resources, ask questions on the Digital Principles Forum, and even become an endorser. Join an inclusive global community of digital change makers. Practice, endorse, engage. Stewarded by the Digital Impact Alliance.
That's a short video on the overview. And by the way, that video is available on YouTube. You can always watch at your own pace and to get a better understanding. It gives a very good overview about the principles. But why digital principles? Why have this package of guiding points, 9 guiding points in adoption of technology in international development circles? Several problems that were experienced by development partners, particularly when working with technology providers to develop solutions and take them to the field where implementation is, with very good intention that these solutions, when developed by providers of technology and given and passed over to the beneficiaries, they'll have tremendous outcome. That was most of development partners' intention. But they experienced problems over time. And some of these problems were due to several reasons, and the results were there was lack of participation and representation in that process of developing solutions and adopting them in the programs and projects and initiatives by international development organizations. And most of the time, the beneficiaries and users did not adopt the solutions that were well meant to benefit them, because they lacked participation. So that question kept lingering in the minds and in the workings of technology providers and international development organization on how to make users to be part of the process so that the solutions are beneficial to them. Accompanied by the same problem was siloed sectors of development of solutions. A time came when international development organization, each of them had adopted a solution, developed a solution, developed the infrastructure, developed the platform, developed the solution itself in siloed ways. So there were so many solutions that were almost similar and doing the same things, but these solutions could not talk to each other. Duplication of resources, wastage of resources, with everybody struggling to have their own. So the question was, how would we go about coordinating this development of solutions so that we have organization and technology providers to talk to each other, where platforms and infrastructure can be shared, better be shared, and then everybody would develop their solution on a common platform. That would save time, would save resources. So there was need for a guidance, for a guide on how to go about that can be adopted across the board. There is also problem of pilots. In early 2000s, every organization and many organizations who try to adopt technology in their work, they ended up having pilot proof of concept that never took off to scale. They died and ended at the pilot, at proof of concept, that yes, this concept is workable, that this technology can be adopted to solve this particular problem at the beneficiaries level, at the operations level of the organizations, but could not be taken beyond that because they were not built on a model that guaranteed scale. So there was a problem and a question on how should proof of concept, how should testing, how should pilots be carried out in a model that would guarantee scale after the end of pilot period. There was also a problem of uncoordinated actors and programs. So there was a question of having a guidance on how to coordinate actors in development space. Most of these problems, the way of working before the principles came to be almost was predictable. The adoption of technology in these programs was bound to fail because there was no proper guidance on how to adopt technology in international development, alongside some of the problems that we have just talked about. So there was need to have a well agreed on guidance on how to adopt technology. And that is how the 9 principles, the package of 9 principles came to be, that are living guide to international development actors, as well as technology developers or owners who work with this development organization on how to develop solutions for the purpose of supporting and adding efficiency in use of technology in programs and projects and intervention. And not just that, but as well as technology that organizations themselves adopt for the purpose of their own operations, whether it's logistics work, whether it's planning work, all those technologies need to be efficient. And that is how this package of 9 principles came to be. And this was a journey that started around early 2000 to 2016 and around then, when the principles were packaged and agreed on by a majority of development organizations who came together to develop those principles, and they were forwarded to Digital Impact Alliance, DIAL, to steward the principles and support in subsequent adoption and adherence to these principles by development organization, support in development of tools that would support in adoption of those principles and adhering them into the working of adopting technology in development work. However, in between, there were several other initiatives that came about, and all of them led to the development of the principles. The language and the fundamentals of all these initiatives between those timelines were all speaking of the same thing, and the spirit was the same. And that is how all these initiatives came in to be all combined through several forums and discussions to end up with the package of 9 principles for digital development. And when that happened and the principles were finally agreed on, the process of endorsing the principles by development organization immediately started. Community dialogue on adopting them started. And this was led again, as mentioned, by Digital Impact Alliance, a UN foundation that is given the mandate and the responsibility to support subsequent development, because these are live guidelines, they are not static, and as well supporting development organization in the adoption of these principles. That said, let's jump into looking at specific principles and look at exactly what do they mean, how can they be adopted. And the first principle is the principle of designing with the user. This principle comes in because most time in the field of international development, technology tools are created without sufficient input from the stakeholders, whose engagement and ownership is critical for the long-term success. Just like we have mentioned, one of the problems was uncoordination and having solutions that are going out there developed by development organization and technology developers and packaged and taken to the end users, but has challenges because the end users were not involved. So this principle is about bringing on board at the earliest possible stage the users. You may call them the users, the beneficiaries, or whoever will come to interact with this technology. They all need to be brought on board and design with them. Bring the users on the table, bring the development partner on the table, and bring on the technology developers on the table. The technology developers bring their expertise, development actors or development organization bring their expertise and specialty in development work. The users bring their needs on the table. They bring their aspirations. They bring what they think is the problem they are facing. And these all three on the table are able to discuss what space does technology have in solving the problem coming from the users. And in that case, the solution to be developed is almost guaranteed at a high percentage of success. And this user-centric design starts with getting to know the people you are designing for through conversation on that table, through observation and co-creation. In business enterprise, this is what would be referred to as shared value, developing a product that you as the business person, when you take this product to the market, you are almost guaranteed that it has users. You'll have customers who will buy. The same in development space. You want to develop a solution that is technology led, that you are sure of meets the aspirations, meets to solve the problems that the users had already defined. By designing with the users and not for them, you can build digital tools to better address the specific context, culture, behaviors, and expectations of the people who will directly interact with the technology, like we have mentioned there before. It is at this stage of bringing everybody on the table that also allow users to opt out if what is coming up from the table is not meeting their aspirations, is not in line with their culture, is coming to bring a disturbance and not solving the problem. This is the time you go back to the drawing board with all the people on the table. It is time to opt out things that cannot work. There are several approaches to help this conversation around designing with the user. And some of the approaches is, for example, design thinking. Okay? The approach of design thinking can be a guidance on that table of designing with the user, where all the parties and stakeholders are on the table. It's one of them, which is design thinking, is basically a process or its stages that help you go through creation of a solution or a product that will be adopted by the people. So one of the approaches to help you design with the user is design thinking, and as well as blending it with human-centered approach. Okay. This principle is one of the most fundamental principles to development of solution or adoption of already developed solution. During 2020 experimentations that we had 7 NGOs experimenting, most of them were able to adopt to this principle and to practice it and put it in practice rather. And this guaranteed much of the successes that we had. Alongside the failures that were there, much of the successes was attributed to this. And picking just an example, like one of the NGOs experimented training of teachers on delivery of digitized curriculum to prepare them for delivery of supplementary teaching through technology post-COVID, when the demand will be actually high based on the time that students will have lost when they are home, designed with the teachers themselves. The curriculum for teaching them on digital tools to deliver curriculum was designed with the teachers. 11 teachers were involved. They were brought on the table with a technology provider, with the member organization that was leading the experimentation, and the teachers themselves. And they designed the curriculum. They said their aspirations, their limitations, what they think they need to have. And the technology provider was able to articulate that and develop it into a curriculum that can be delivered to the 11 teachers. And that contributed to the success of that particular experimentation. So that is all about designing with the user. You can call it many names. You can say making the user to participate in the process, but it basically boils down to having everybody on the table from the beginning. Let's go to the second principle, which is the principle of understanding the ecosystem. Dedicating time and resources to analyze the ecosystem is what this principle is about. It is understanding the context of where your solution will be implemented or will be used. And this helps to ensure that selected technology or solution or tools will be relevant and sustainable and will not be a duplicate of what is already existing. Understand what is there. Bring the people on the table, the first principle. When you are deliberating about their problems and looking at whether technology has space in solving their problem, go further and look at what is existing compared to what we have brought up as our aspirations and what technology can have in solving our problems. Is such a solution already existing in the ecosystem? If it is existing, do we need to develop or do we need to adopt that and tailor make it to suit the solution that we need? So it is about understanding the culture. It is about understanding the gender norms. It is about understanding technology infrastructure that is already existing in the ecosystem. It is understanding the power dynamics of other development partners. Who are other development partners in this ecosystem, in the space we are looking at implementing the solution that has been talked about in the first principle? Are those development partners already implementing a similar solution? And therefore, we only need to join effort. We don't need to duplicate. We don't need to start all over again. We don't need to redial the wheel. So understand the ecosystem so that you don't make mistakes of ignorance, of not knowing what already exists on the ground. Know who is doing what around the same problems. There are other development partners who are working with the same users, who are working with the same beneficiaries, who are working on the same community, on other thematic areas. You could be focusing on education, there are others focusing on health, there are others focusing on livelihoods, on the same community. And they could have developed a solution that can be adopted for education purposes, for solving the problems you are facing in education sector, and only need to be tweaked to suit the solutions that you have aspired to have in the first principle. And therefore that eliminates the aspect of having silos of different solutions by everybody. One solution, one platform can be used to have different solutions to cater for different problems. Who are those partners that might feel that you are bringing on a solution to displace them? Power dynamics again. So you have to understand them. Don't be blinded by technology and what you have talked about in the first principle on the table. Go beyond the solution. There are other factors around technology that would affect the delivery of that solution. You might have brilliant idea, brilliant solution discussed with the users, discussed with the developers of solutions, technology developers. But again, if you don't understand the space around where you'll deliver that solution, then you can have a very brilliant idea killed by other factors which are external to the solution, which do not mean the solution was not well thought out, but you did not understand the environment around. Discuss the accessibility of that solution that you are developing. Are there people with special needs that you are targeting with the solution? Brilliant idea, brilliant solution, brilliant technology tool, but then you need to understand the accessibility of it. Will it come to bring a wider gap to the people who you are targeting to bring the solution to? So don't be blinded by the solution you have discussed while trying to apply the first principle. Come down to the second principle, understand who is around you, so that the coordination will be, understand the legal and regulatory policies around where you'll be implementing this solution. You might have a solution, but this solution might be affected by the regulatory and policy issues around the country, the county, the region where you want to implement this solution. For example, you might be bringing a solution, technology-led, that will be relying on radio frequencies, for example. And in the country, you need to understand in the environment where you want to implement that, will frequencies be available? How much does frequencies cost? What are the regulations in allocation of radio frequencies? Will that actually be possible? If you don't understand that, you'll develop the solution, design with the users, perfectly done, but then because you did not understand the ecosystem, you'll have a problem at the deployment time, because that is the time you realize, oh, we need to have understood the ecosystem better, and we need to have understood the issues of, for example, the radio airwaves, if that is what your technology is relying on. Understand the duty bearer ecosystem again. The government could be the duty bearer of what you are trying to do. You are complementing what the government is doing. You need to understand what are the plans for the government. It's about the ecosystem. You could be developing a solution and the government is already developing a similar solution. So by the time you finish and you want to deploy and you are bringing on the government on board, then you have problems because the government will say, oh, we have been developing a similar solution, so we can't adopt what you are bringing on board. Why? You did not understand the ecosystem. We jump on to the third principle, the principle of designing for scale. We mentioned this as one of the major problems that came about when before the principles came to be and before development organizations started adopting the principles. It's about the piloting problem. Everybody piloting their solutions, proving the concept, but then cannot go beyond there. Too often, international development projects fail to move beyond the pilot stage or to reach anticipated scale. And we'll actually see as we move on in one of the videos that we'll watch again, not thinking about scale, developing solutions with a model in mind about the scale. And scale would mean different things to different people, to different context. But it's all about requiring your solution to be adopted beyond the tests, beyond the pilot population. And this requires expanding to bigger geographical area, to a wider community, to a wider number of users, which also means more resources. It also means more funding, for example. So you need to start your testing, design with the user, understand the ecosystem, but also put into consideration that after the pilot, we'll need to scale this beyond the pilot, beyond the testing phase. So start understanding what is the environment beyond the test population. What is the other population? We are testing with 10 people who are the key people in the test environment. But to scale it, it will involve to be used by 10,000 people. So what does it mean to scale this to 10,000 people? What resources will be needed? What model do we use to scale that so that you don't start on a bad footing? You don't set precedents that cannot be replicated to scale of 10,000 people. So that is about thinking now when testing and thinking from the end, working backwards to the test environment. Designing for scale means different things, as we have said, and it's about widespreading your test to bigger community. It's basically about expanding to new users. If we are in business environment again, it's about expanding to new markets. Okay, which other regions do you want to reach? Would it be countries? Would it be regions within the same country? So again, think beyond proof of concept. Think beyond the test. Because ultimately, no development organization wants to go only at the test stage and leave it there, because the real benefits, the impact is not measurable at the test environment, at the pilot stage. The real impact is at scale. Okay, it could be at test. For example, the cost might be slightly higher, but you have a model that dictates at scale, the cost must come down. That is one example, that we don't expect costs of doing things to be rising per user when at scale. It should be reducing per user at scale. So that is something to put in mind. It's about identifying partners early enough, because you'll need partners to scale. You could be piloting in one region of a country, but once you prove the concept, you need these partners to scale that concept. So these partners need to be brought on board early enough, preferably at the first principle, designing with the user, bring the stakeholders on board, because these are the stakeholders. They'll be champions of other regions in terms of scaling, in terms of bringing resources on board. Understand the duty bearer and have the buy-in. Again, for example, government, you need to have the buy-in of the government. If your solution comes to complement what the government is doing, understand what government plans are. What are the policies of the government in terms of work that the government plans to do in the next 5, 10, 20 years? Does your solution align to that? Do your solution align to the aspirations of the country in terms of achieving the SDGs? So, because when you have the buy-in early enough by government, it means the government will be part of scaling to the entire country. Otherwise, you'll have the proof of concept, but government might come in again and say, this is not something we think we will scale. We have proved, but we can't scale because the model of pilot is not a model that can be put at scale. I give an example of this principle and how it failed in a project that I was involved sometimes back in Coast Kenya. And we were developing a solution for child protection, and was geared to strengthening child protection mechanism at the community level. And this solution was to be used by volunteer children officers, a mobile application for reporting purposes of child abuse cases at the community level. The solution catered for most of the problems that VCOs were going through. It was about the problem of confidentiality. It was about real-time reporting of cases for action to be taken as fast as possible. It was about documenting these cases comprehensively, which was not achievable using pen and paper and monthly returns on papers. So when digitally done, this solution was perfect. Designed with the user, we understood the ecosystem to an extent, but we failed to think about scale model in this aspect. The application, when testing with 20 volunteer children officers, we bought them expensive mobile phones for testing purposes. So we had these users at the community level with 2 mobile phones. They had a mobile phone initially of their own. We have brought in more powerful, more interesting mobile gadgets to them. They have 2 mobile phones, one for this application and one that they already have. Most of the volunteers kept theirs aside. They started using the one for application for their own purposes, for calls and SMSs and all that. It's a bit cumbersome to have 2 mobile phones. So that is one thing that we never thought about. But that was not the thing. These mobile phones were worth an amount of money, quite expensive, that scaling up in the entire country, where there were to be thousands of volunteer children officers, other than the 20 we were testing with, that was not a model to scale. And after testing, when started to discuss about scale, which we had not discussed about earlier, then the government was like, this will need proper budgeting and putting allocation in the national government budget in a financial year. It is not even supplementary budget. It is not even a budget that can be catered for by development partners. The government need to plan. So this plan of scaling has to come to a halt, because we never thought about scale initially. But we got a workaround very quickly, but that did not come without wastage of time and wastage of resources. We started thinking we should have started the testing by installing the application in volunteer children officers' mobile phones, because they had mobile phones that could cater for this application. It could run on low-end mobile phones. We did not need to buy expensive phones, but we were excited about the application. We got blinded by what we were developing and we forgot about scale. So when it came to scaling, that was a problem. We should have thought about scaling and know that we did not need to buy expensive mobile phones. Because when we moved from one location to the neighboring location, we found the word had already spread to the community actors that this development partner is buying expensive mobile phones for community actors, the volunteer children officers. So when we went there, the first thing people are looking for is boxes of mobile phones. That's what they were looking for, not even the solution. They want the mobile phones. That was not possible. And so that brought in challenges around scaling. I'll stop it at that point and let Mika come in and take us through several of the other principles. So thank you very much.
These are principles, and think them as your friends, not as something threatening to you. The experimentation is also, if you're if that's confirmed and you get green light to that, that's also a possibility to learn how to use these in practice. And since we are talking about experiments, not everything needs to be in full order. So when listening to these principles, learn as much as possible, but don't feel also threatened. The threshold starts where you are at the moment. So build for sustainability. I'll start with an example now. In Kenya, and I know Peter and some of you may know much more about this example, but in Kenya, when the current president Uhuru Kenyatta was chosen as a president, he had this promise that he will bring a laptop to every single child. I think he was talking about first graders in Kenya, and that was kind of a grand scale program in Kenya. And I was already thinking, and I think many other people were thinking, that what's the sustainability of this idea? Like it sounds great. Every pupil, first grader, would have his or her own laptop delivered, but what would happen then? And I know that every NGO is always thinking about sustainability in any case. I mean, it is often asked by MFA or any donor, what's the sustainability plan for this project? And I think this is especially valid when bringing in technology, especially if it's coming from outside. It is brought by someone else and brought to the project. It doesn't already exist there. So in this case of the grand scale delivering laptops to the first graders, you could easily ask, well, what happens if that laptop gets broken? What happens to the laptops when those first graders move to the second grade? Do they keep them or do they give them to the first graders? Who is going to give maintenance and support, since every school or office usually has an ICT coordinator? What's the sustainability there? What happens with the viruses or worn out batteries? What's the plan to recycle them, and so on and so on? And I don't think that there were many answers to these questions. So the questions for sustainability were very valid at that point. So, for example, using local resources, using local companies and local solutions when those are available, it can be one way to sustainability. Also, budgeting for management, maintenance, support, build sustainability during and after the project. And also, if you can bring in some kind of business incentives, there might be some companies who would be willing to continue, and they have a business incentive to stay on board even after their project. That again adds to the sustainability. So some thoughts there. So then being data driven, and again I start with an example that I've seen many times, where we hire external consultants. As NGOs, we may hire external consultants to do final evaluation or midterm evaluation of the projects. And typically the results, it takes a lot of time. And then when they come in, it might be that the project has already ended, or there's very little time before it ends once you get the results, like how have we been doing. So there's little time to learn from the results and then modify the implementation plan. But there have been cases by several organizations, some of you listening, that have adopted, for example, digital data gathering tools and made the cycle of collecting the data from the communities and from the stakeholders, from parents, pupils, teachers, whoever they are, health workers, and visualizing the information, for example, into graphs that can be analyzed by the project staff or the local communities, and then making decisions how to modify. Are we on the right track? Should we change something? So this cycle gets much more quicker, and there's much more ownership than when externalizing it. And this allows the organization to be more data-driven, base its decisions and the design into actual results. And then using open standards. One example comes from software that in the Power Bank we have been training. That's Kobo Toolbox, digital data gathering software, and that's completely free and open source software. Then there are also other similar kind of software that you need to pay monthly fees to a company. And as long as there's a bigger organization running and they have a credit card and they have the project and they have the budget, they can invest in even quite expensive tools. But if there are local partners that with a smaller budget, and then they are being trained to utilize those proprietary data collection tools, what happens when the project ends? With that capacity, are they able to continue? That might not be the case, because they might not have the credit card, they might not have a specific budget for paying monthly fees. Whereas in the open source, that can be freely spread, that open source application, and utilized even after. So it links to scalability and sustainability as well. But it goes the other way around also. When you are producing and when you are collecting information and for example, producing research and reports, are you making it available to others? Are you marking it as open source, or are you publishing through Creative Commons, so that any data, any solution, any innovation would benefit also other actors as much as possible? So keep in mind when choosing software and when you're actually producing data to use open standards as much as possible. It's not always possible, and sometimes proprietary software is the way to go, but this is something to consider. And then I'll also talk about reusing and improving. So here, my kind of a rule of thumb is be as lazy as possible. And what it means is that I've heard many times organizations getting excited about building their own app, whether it's about data collection or some kind of a communication tool or whatever it is. They would like to go to some company and start building a new app and have their logo on it. And then why I'm saying be as lazy as possible is in most cases you can skip that. You can look around, as Peter was talking about, mapping the existing ecosystem. Look what's already existing and can you reuse and improve that. And then you can save a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of headache, and start with something that is already there. For example, companies may be very willing to modify the existing products with much less time and money than compared to starting with something that doesn't yet exist. So what resources are currently available? Iterate on them, improve applicability and quality. And it doesn't only apply to for example, digital devices or services. It also applies to information. So whenever collecting new information, maybe doing a study, look around and see if there are already other studies, already existing data available, and if you can use that and maybe add with your own data instead of starting from the scratch again. So feel free to be as lazy as possible and build on top of what already exists. That's a often good way to go. Now I'll hand back to Peter. I think you'll be talking about addressing privacy and security.
Thank you, Mika. Before I get to that, let me just get back to what Mika has talked about reuse and using what is existing. I think in the last experimentations, this was one of the principles that most of the 7 NGOs try to use as much as possible. And that made them move very fast. And for example, Like again in Tanzania, with what they wanted to do, understanding the problem they wanted to solve of data collection, they looked around and they identified Obeya clickers. So they did not need to develop a new solution. All they needed to do is to use existing platform of Obeya clickers, the infrastructure, and then just tailor-make the questionnaires that suits their need of the data they want to collect. Again, one of the NGOs in Kenya, ISF, they used existing SMS infrastructure, social media platforms, and all they needed to do is actually to tailor-make the messages and test whether those platforms are usable, accessible, and they are suitable to pass the messages that they needed to pass. In Coast Kenya, ISF used a platform that is already existing to train the teachers. In Somalia, Africa Care used a platform that is existing to develop an infrastructure that for hospitals and record keeping end-to-end in hospital and dispensing medicine and all that. So this is a very simple principle to adhere to, and this is one of principles that we have seen NGOs in the last experimentation adhere to. But it all goes back to scanning the ecosystem that is existing. Going to the principle of addressing privacy and security. Here is one of the principles that most people tend to ignore or not to be conscious about. And it is one of the most important because it is currently looked at from external eyes beyond what most development partners might think. And this principle is about treating information as though it is your own information being collected by someone else. It is about addressing privacy and security of the information that you collect in terms of how it is collected, how it is stored, and how it is shared, and how it is disposed or destroyed eventually when you don't need it. And one of the most important things around this principle is, for example, if we recall, and those who are aware, is that in around May 2018, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, came into force in EU. And this brought a lot of drastic changes in terms of how personal data is collected, handled, and transferred and destroyed. Beyond the EU countries, most of the other countries where most of you as development partners and as members, you'll find yourselves working, those countries have already started domesticating those laws that were developed in EU. And for example, giving an example of Kenya, in 2019, towards the end of 2019, Kenya domesticated the GDPR by developing its own law, the data protection law that have already been passed and it is in effect. So for partners and everybody, whether business or development partners working in Kenya, need to be conscious, particularly when they are using technology and they need to collect data. They need to discuss with the developers if they are developing a new application. They need to discuss with the infrastructure owners if they are adopting and reusing something that is already existing in terms of how data will be collected, handled, and disposed. And making the data subjects, the owners, the people where you are collecting data, to be aware of how you use that data. And you also, as a matter of fact, you try as much as possible to reduce on personal identifiable information or data that you collect from the field. The less of personal data that you collect, the better. The more of anonymous data that is not specific to individual persons that you collect, the better you are. However, there is a catch to this. Data protection and security is not a niche of most development partners. They don't have the expertise, and they would spend a lot of time and resources into this. So the best advice around this is transfer this responsibility to the person who is supporting your solution on the back where possible. Even if it comes with minimal cost, let someone take responsibility of security and privacy, whether it is a developer or anybody hosting data that you have. Let those people hold that for you so that you don't incur a lot of cost and trying to get into a niche that is a bit more technical, because this privacy and security principle has about 90% of it is more technical. So, but you need to comply to it. So the best thing is to transfer this responsibility. If we go to B collaborative principle. Thank you, Nika. This principle is about partnerships as well. You can call it many other names. So it's being collaborative, it's developing partnerships, it is working with others, it is sharing information, insight, strategies, sharing resources in the solution that you want to develop so that you increase the efficiency of what you are trying to do. So don't do things that you are not an expert in. Bring other people, okay? Work smart rather than working hard. So bring on board other people who can, at a minimal cost, make the process more efficient. I use again the example of Like. I remember when they started using Ombea clickers for data collection in the schools where they are working with girls around sports. They had a training, okay? So you bring on board resourceful people who will do the training. Then after that, you are able to get on the solution and to use the solution where it will be based on a platform where somebody else has developed that platform. Share the platform, okay? Develop your application on a platform that is already existing. Don't start things from the scratch. Reuse the platform and tailor-make your specific solution sitting on the same platform that other people have developed. I don't know how to put this, but to give an example that is a bit outside of development circles is, for example, mobile network operators. You find masts that are elected in different parts of the country for distribution of signal. So other than every mobile network operator putting up their own physical infrastructure, they lent from others. So they just put their antenna into that mast. So the platform is existing, just place your technology on the existing platform. The catch around this principle is about design stage. So from the word go when you are designing your project, even writing the concept, this is where you start thinking about being collaborative, because you'll find that bringing partners on board when your project has already started off, you have already budgeted, you have already designed your M&E tools, you have developed everything. It becomes a bit problematic to bring partners on board because some of those partners may have a cost implication which you had not budgeted from the word go. So being collaborative is not something to pick on the way, it's something to think about from the time you design your project. Who are the partners will I need to bring on board? And you have to be conscious. Being collaborative doesn't happen both in technology aspect and outside technology aspect. It doesn't happen by accidentally. You have to be consciously aware that you need to collaborate, you need to work with the partners. Okay, and I think that ends the principles. If I take a minute to wrap up most of these principles that we have covered with a common example that seems to cut across all the principles that had successes and failures of some of these principles and not being mindful about them. This is probably an example that Mika is aware of. Some times back, I worked in coastal Kenya, and we had a development of an application that was for strengthening the child protection mechanism at the community level, basically by helping community workers and volunteer children officers to report cases of child abuse to the government ministry at the click of a button and when that happens. Okay? To cut the story short, we worked developing this application for almost 3 years or more. And development of this application involved working with volunteer children officers because they were the users, they were the beneficiaries, because it was coming to sort out some of the problems they were having when reporting cases of abuse at the community level. Be it time, be it distance, be it confidentiality, to hide their confidentiality when they are reporting cases. We know how child abuse is sensitive and perpetrators fight back. So we thought technology has space into solving some of those problems. And we developed a mobile application. Designing with user is one of the principles that worked very well. Reason, we brought the coders, the actual technical developers of the application, to work with volunteer children officers in the same room for about almost 1 year, like 1 day every month. Everybody could not understand why we are doing that, why we are combining lay people in technology with coders. Why don't you write these requirements in a requirements document, specification document, and give it to the coders? They'll code what you have written. But we brought them together to sit in the same room. The VCOs say what they want and the coder develops that, and they test every stage. So that worked very well. And most of the successes was attributed to that stage of designing with the users, sitting with the actual development coders and the technical people in developing the solution. However, coming to second principle, scanning the ecosystem, we failed flat because we all focused on the solution and what the solution should do and how we want to prove the concept that the solution can work and solve about 99% of the problems the volunteer children officers were facing. And we forgot everything else. We forgot to scan what partners are there in the environment of the coast where we wanted to deploy that, what were the government plans in terms of child protection? So eventually, when we started rolling out this, because we did not scan very well, we started having challenges. The first challenge was a development partner in the same area who had more muscle already fought back and said they already have something similar and better that they were already developing with the government, which was not necessarily the case. But the issue of attribution, and you want to be seen to be the one supporting the government more. I know we all understand those power dynamics within the development circles. We did not understand the government had already another system, and if we had worked with them well in understanding the ecosystem, we should have designed our application in a different way, in a way that it will enjoin with what the government had already developed. Going to design for scale on the same example, we failed because we forgot to think through how we will scale this application in the entire country that has over 20,000 volunteer children officers. So at the pilot stage of deploying in one county in the country, we bought the volunteer children officers mobile phones, okay, all of them, about mobile phones worth about 10,000 Kenya shillings. So, and that worked very well, but we forgot that for government to scale this, because we as development partners, we were not to scale. It is the government to scale after we prove this works. We forgot that the government, how much the government will need to invest in those volunteer children officers, actually more than 20,000 volunteer children officers. How much will the government need to invest? We forgot about that. So the scale was a problem, because the first question was, after handling all the other problems of power dynamics with the other partners and discussing with government, the other issue was, how will we be able to invest this much as government? So we ought to have thought through, and what started coming at that point was how to discuss with VCOs, other than buying mobile phones, we use their own mobile phones, okay? We install the application in their own mobile phones. And because they are recognized by government and they get some support from government, they won't mind to have invested there. But we all got excited about technology and buying new phones and distributing them, okay? So by going to the next county to prove the fact, we were told you bought mobile phone. We did not think about scale from the beginning. On issue of security and privacy, we also failed a bit, because we later came to understand that government does not work with applications whose data is not saved or running from government servers at the government security center. So our applications was running from the cloud. It probably might but
Peter,
the government
I think
won't here transfer those data. It might appear data and the application infrastructure that marks the end. Go on, Mika.
just saying that your voice is occasionally cutting, but I think we can hear most of it. So please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So we forgot to think about the security and how government handles its data where it is involved. Going back to the last one about collaborative, we forgot about bringing partners on board. Had we brought the partner who brought in the issue of power dynamics much later on board when designing, things would have run a bit better. The partner did not stop from the solution being deployed and now bringing the partner towards the tail end when we want to deploy this application into another location from where we had been testing. Partners on board from the design point and being part of it And so you sort out the issue of power dynamics that might come on board. Thank you, Mika, back to you.
Thanks very much, Peter. Experiences and kind of case example from the real world, very, very interesting to hear. I think that covers the case example part very well. Let's now hear from you. So we could go back to the same Jamboard where we were. So I'm going to post the link again. Just it's the latest chat message which you can see there. And if you click, I will now share that screen. So now viewing the again the Jamboard where we were, and you can go from the first frame or wherever you are to the fourth one. So fourth one, it's the next after the what was your first memory of interacting with technology. So the fourth one, and now it is purely subjective and you don't have to think anything else, but based on this presentation, just choose one. Which digital principle is most interesting or important for you? What is kind of more inspiring at the moment from your point of view? Just create a sticky note from the left toolbar and write it there. And you don't need to and by the way, if you like, please add your name there. So because then we might want to ask a few questions. That's not obligatory, but that is just helping us as facilitators to have a bit of discussion with you. And there are no right or wrong answers at all. You can choose any one you like. It's purely subjective, your personal view at the moment based on this presentation or your past experiences or whatever. And we can already see some. There's one called co-creations. I'm wondering which principle does it refer to? Is it about collaboration or designing with the user or something else? Okay, now there's a very, very big sticky note here. I wonder if we can, I have to delete that one. Sorry, whoever had it, and please rewrite it so that it won't block the whole screen. While you are writing those, I'm already asking from Mokaya and Veri, you were talking about use open standards, open data, open source, open innovation. So can you open the mic and just explain why do you think it's most interesting or important for you at this moment?
Thank you, Mika, for the chance. Yeah, my name is Mokaya Omweri from International Solidarity Foundation. Yeah, so currently we've a concept that we want to experiment with. Yeah, it's on a peer-to-peer knowledge sharing platform, like creating a peer-to-peer knowledge sharing platform for our farmers who are our main beneficiaries. And while working on the proposal, we realized that, you know, like currently we other platforms already operating. Like there is one we call WeFarm. It's a large platform for farmers across Africa and all over the world. So and then there is another one based in UK called Climate Age. Climate Age is a platform that gives farmers and service providers an opportunity to create platforms for sharing knowledge and so forth. So we were thinking maybe as ISF or International Solidarity Foundation, we could maybe go for one of those. We can call them maybe scaled up platforms, but again, we don't want to go there as and create things from scratch. We were thinking maybe we could use their platforms because I think like Climate Age as an open source platform whereby they give you an opportunity to use their tools to create to create anything that you want to use to serve your farmers. So and for us, ISF, I think that is a good opportunity for us, considering this is an experiment that we want to try. And like for now, our current program period is ending this year. But this experiment is something that we want to continue to the next phase. So it's something that we're hoping that if we implement it, even if we exit the program area, it will be able to continue without us investing in it. So I think we're looking at it in terms of sustainability. Yeah, thank you, Mika.
Okay, good. And who else would like to? Eva and Antti, you chose Build for Sustainability. Would you like to say something, a bit elaborate on why you thought that was most interesting or important?
Yeah, it's something that we learned during our projects in developing the education for deaf children in Tanzania. So we built there a learning center with for example, a learning center with fiber cable internet connection. And the city was supposed to, after the project ended, pay the internet costs for that, but it doesn't. So now the big investment for the learning center means that we don't have the internet connection there now. So we somehow have to make sure that even, the promises are not always kept. So how do we make sure that the things that they promise will really happen, so that we don't make sort of a false investments?
Yeah.
Maybe it's important also to add a little bit the information. There might be people who don't know at all what was that system. We had a project 14 to 16, and the partner was Arusha City, and school was public school, and we built the learning center with the idea that it, like they say there, that it's the most modern learning center in whole Eastern Africa, with Wi-Fi network all over, and lots of laptops, and possibilities to learn in modern learning environment. And then the basic element what is needed to use that investment, which was quite big, so is the internet connection. And we had all the deals with the city to make it work, that all right, they take care of these costs and also cost of stationery and such. And then we just noticed that, well, they don't do it. And of course, we've been talking about this challenge with them and found some solutions every now and then, but it's quite a challenge to act with administration which is not committed. And even though I have met personally city directors, all of them, because they have changed like 3-4 times, the city director during project and after it. So every city director I have met personally, and everybody have shake hands with me, and we have written papers and such, and yeah, we take care of this. And still we have the same problem there.
Yeah, I think the situation is something that many of us can share. It's a tricky one, no easy, no tricks to get around it. I think sometimes it almost needs like in-depth analysis of people's incentives and motivations, like what is it in for them, for their maybe career or for their position. Is it somehow directly connected to that one? And if not, then how to make it connect, to make it so important for that person? I know it's easy to say, it's not easy to do that, and you have done a lot of preparation and contacting and all of that, and it can still fail. Yeah, that's the reality. And for example, with these experiments, we are clearly saying that you can take risks, and succeeding in all of it, it's not always guaranteed. We do understand that, even if you did everything right. But of course, the likelihood of succeeding gets better, for example, through following these principles. If someone has something to comment, maybe Peter or anyone who is in the audience to this case Eva and Antti were talking about, feel free. I think this is a good point, and it's not always connected to digital things at all. It's also about sustainability of almost any program, or as you can see, many of these principles can be utilized as well and are quite familiar to most NGOs. But of course, here we look at the specific digital aspect of them.
I see Ali's hand is up and getting tired.
Okay, sorry, I'm looking at the screen, so I don't see everyone, but yeah, thanks, Peter. Ari, go ahead.
I can be the spokesperson here from the anyway, very interesting. We are with a group of altogether 7 who are following this sports development. This morning we've been
Ari, can you speak closer to the mic? It's a little bit difficult to hear. I think it might help.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, we 7 over here, actually altogether 8. We were discussing the similar issues what you've been going through now concerning our project, especially this data-driven, because we are looking for results as well, and then also to how to create it to be usable in the environment where we are over here. For example, like Antti was already speaking, that internet connections might be rather poor. So in a sense of getting data or getting information to be in such a mode where it can be utilized without internet connection. And especially, I like this idea of what Sports Development Aid is doing over here, to invite the teachers to bigger towns where there are good connections to receive information, and if there is something to be downloaded that can be used on like offline in the bushes. So I mean in the schools which are not really close to the best connections. So these are the things what we are really looking forward over here, that are very simple to use, have of course sports and health education, but also they can be definitely used offline, and then to get the feedback. So I think this Ombea, what we just received and what they have been using successfully over here, thanks to power bank. So I think these all to make the combination that when we are probably this year we are learning to implement and collect the data very well on all these issues. So I suppose that next year we can open up a little bit more and come out with good solutions as well, how to operate in rural Africa. And I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much for your help anyway, and so far for the good seminar. And Thea Swai wants to also add Kituki dog over here.
Yeah, thank you very much for the training. It has been useful to us. The OMBER we have been using on the field.
Please, can you also talk closer to the mic? Then we can hear you very well, but it seems to be that the mic is only hearing the voice from close by.
Hello, so
Yes, excellent.
I just would like to thank Fingo Power Bank for training us on OMBER, as we have started to utilize it on the field. And from this year, we have also trained our new field officers who are going to work to implement our Empowered Girls Speak Out project in the rural to utilize OMBER in data collection. Yeah, so we think this kind of technology is going to ease our work, and we are going to transfer the knowledge and skill of utilizing OMBER to other civil society organizations. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'd like to add, just to add over here also that if there are a lot of NGOs, I checked about 17 participants, and now this application for Power Bank is open to look for the digital solutions. And I really fully support all the other organizations that are going to apply to make it work well, and then we can share the information and exchange ideas. Like and SDA, we are probably not going to apply now because we received already, and we are doing very good with this. So indeed, I'm encouraged to go through the principles and then see what is best for your environment over there, wherever you are working with your NGO, and go and apply because it really works. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. There's the training. Thanks for the thanks so far. Of course, we are now in the middle, halfway of the training, and there will be several interesting cases coming up. So we do continue, and obviously it's possible to apply even if you had received, you were doing the outsourced experimentation last year. It doesn't stop you from applying again. Thanks. Let's take the last one until then we go to the next phase. So let's choose here. Abdias is saying reuse and improve. So Abdias, would you like to share a bit why you chose that one?
Thank you very much, Mika. My name is Abdulaziz. Yeah, I have chosen two, but I will choose reuse and improve, because what you develop of any technology should be a kind of a living thing, which you can, improve. And when you build it, you have to revisit it and you have to learn it. So whatever you learn, you put it again and you improve it so that it works better and better for some time until it becomes, fully fledged. So that's why I like that one. It should be, a living, and it accepts learning. It should be accepting the learning so that you can revisit and improve, check back until you revisit several times. It will not be perfect. So that's why it's a living thing that you are working on it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Great. And so now we are moving then to the vivid classic case example. We are going to show an interesting video and then give you a bit of material, and then it's your turn to actually start applying these principles in a given case. And so that's going to deepen your understanding of these principles and how to utilize them and what kind of questions to ask. So that's coming up. Stay on the channel. Since we have been now working for almost 90 minutes, let's take a 5-minute break and do stand up, stretch your legs, take a sip of water, and then come back about past, and then we continue. Is it okay? So 5-minute break, and then we continue. Hello, everyone. We brought you back here. Sorry if it happened abruptly, because you might not see the timer counting down when you are focusing on Jamboard and not the Zoom. But welcome back to the main hall, everybody on board. And now it's time to have a look at the work that you have been doing. So Peter, would you like to share your screen now so that you can lead the discussion?
Yeah, in a moment.
You have a good camera, Mokaya Omveri. We can see you clearly. Are you in the ISF office? We'll talk about that a bit later. Yeah. Now we.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So welcome back, everyone. We'll have a session that's a bit free, open. Just anyone pick your mic and just see if you have something to say which group you are. I move to that group, and you can comment based on what number of stars you have put in regard to a particular principle and how you think how well it was adhered to or put into practice or applied in the video that we all watched. So for example, if I pick on group 2, these are 2 stars on design with a user. So you could just pick the mic and just say, why do you think you had to give 2 stars onto that, and why these 5 stars for this? We don't have to move one by one. You can just comment on the key ones that you want to say something about, even if they are just 2 or 3 or 1. So let's move ahead. Someone could just start. And mute yourself. Just in case someone is speaking and then.
Should we start with the group 2? Maybe let's go then one by one.
Yeah, someone in group 2 could comment on maybe these 3 that we are seeing, the first 3 principles.
Yeah, we had a really good discussion with Laura from Invalid Elite, and we're both, or all of us are working with special needs groups. And that's something that was not considered when maybe this OLPC was designed. But yes, the one group was missing, and now the education is based on inclusive education in all countries, but that was not taken into consideration in that planning. Also, we have a lot of experience in using computers in education for deaf children. And we know how important it is to involve the teachers and to train the teachers. It's not enough that the kids get the access to computers. Yes, technically they learn how to use the computers, but it's quite different world when you're talking about educating the children.
Yeah.
But once the teachers are trained, the results are very good.
In other hand, there is always should be curriculum which the learning process is based on, and then all the material and all the tools, whatever we use, should be supporting all those things that is written in curriculum. So that's why it is so important to get to know local curriculum, how to work to make it more effective through the this modern technology, and it is then quite much based on programs and systems in the computer. Not the technology, I mean the resources in there, and also resources of teachers, how they can use it. And so the idea that just to bring laptops to children at school and notice the process, what happens there is, it's not just learning. It's okay, they learn technically things, but it don't support the whole learning process, which should be based on the curriculum.
Thank you. Should we go to someone else? Group 3. I can see some principals have no star at all, and 2 principals have 2 stars, and another 1 star. Someone probably could comment why this, based on the video that you watched.
Yes, we were quite critical about the project itself. It sounded very arrogant to start with. And that's why, since it wasn't designed with the users at all, we decided that it doesn't deserve any stars. Also, understanding the existing society is minimal, at least after reading those articles. Seems so.
Okay, thank you. Group 3. I can see in the group 3 there is a question mark on P Principle 8, addressing privacy and security. You want to say something?
Yes, we didn't have any knowledge about that one. Maybe this video was cut before that kind of information was given, but we don't know if children's privacy was somehow considered, or security. The only hint was about stealing the tool itself.
Okay. It would be interesting to hear your perspective on Principle 9, be collaborative, the 3 stars.
We saw that they were doing some cooperation with in technical sense. Mm-hmm. So maybe in that level there was cooperation and they were able to develop something. But on the other hand, if we look at the background and everything else, then they don't deserve more stars.
Okay. Interesting. There's another piece of video. If we had time to watch that, you would see how other companies, Apple and other big computer manufacturing companies, came in to fight the idea because they thought this person is coming in to shrink their market by doing this free kind of distribution, and they started competition because they were actually not part of this. Let's go to group 4. Maybe you could comment on the ones that we are seeing with 3 star, 2 star, 4 star.
Okaya, do you want to say something else? Something first?
Okay, maybe I'll say something on designing with the user. Yeah, we gave it a 3-star because we felt that as much as they tried to design the product with the user in mind, they didn't really capture everything. For example, the Nigeria kids that are using desks which are slanted. So that's why we gave it 3. And then maybe briefly on understanding the existing ecosystem, we also gave them 3 because we felt that they didn't capture all the key stakeholders while designing the project. For example, they forgot the environmentalists who are complaining about polluting the environment once maybe the laptops are damaged. They also didn't consider the other humanitarian practitioners who are thinking that maybe by them introducing that, maybe they could be crowding the funding industry and maybe limiting the funding to other key projects. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's it. That's right on group 4. Group 4, do you want to comment on any of these last principles?
Yeah, it's kind of like just hold a second. Just hold a second. Can you switch off your speaker, please? Sorry, we have 2 computers on all the time, and I can hear myself there on the left. Okay. So anyway, yeah. I mean, this was an ambitious issue. What they were trying to do, definitely, yeah. And I don't know whether scalability, was there any upscaling on this, but as at the end of this, one of the articles, they said that at the end of the day, this was a fantastic idea. Unfortunately, the others also took over for the development, so there was a lot of good things going on. But I must say that I don't know from which year the video was. Was it like from the 1980s or 1990s already? But when looking at the video first, it came to my mind that guy from Massachusetts must be a true believer, really. And in the name of Jesus Christ, he was creating something small for the children, and so that they can become the servants of Jesus. This looked very, very religious issue in the beginning, especially the interviewer and the guy. They looked like they were missionaries from the USA, just coming to conquer the world and Cambodia. But I think I know it wasn't, but it felt like that, I must say. But as we check also for the data-driven open standards, reuse and improve, sort of I mean, it's kind of like, okay, when the others also took the advantage to start developing a fantastic computer with the price of, there was one which was about $80 already. But in between $100 and $200, there are fantastic computers that can be purchased already. So this fellow was really on the right track, but unfortunately, he himself was not looking for, especially to be more collaborative, because he was commenting on the others' criticism in a very bad way. He wasn't very collaborative, but it started something new. And it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I think the whole idea it's very fantastic, very something. When the video starts, you are consumed into it and you wonder, why has this not had happened 50 years ago and when computers came to the world? But then it's a one-man show. He has this idea and he wants to move with it and he believes in it. And no other partners are brought on board. It's a one-man show moving from country to country, selling the idea. Here it is. I'm coming and I'm rolling it up in schools. So that we go to another session. Time has really gone. I'm not sure whether there's anything Group 1 would want to comment on, or Mika. And then you would move to the next final step.
Yeah, just saying that, yeah, there's clearly technological superiority, like great inventions there. But as Eva mentioned, the idea of just giving a laptop to children and not needing any teacher, not needing any guidance, and they just mastering themselves and learning skills, that the whole idea is absurd from the pedagogical point of view. So there were some things that really were really great and some fundamentally skewed thoughts here as well. So it's a really interesting case, fun to analyze, and some lessons learned there as well. I think we are almost kind of on the end of this. We could still talk about the principles, but I would like us to just have a quick chat on the topics or the concepts you have been working on, and we'll notify everyone that since this training was coming a bit late, so then we would like to give you 2 more days if you would like to edit your concept based on this training, and then the draft should be submitted by the end of Friday this week. And of course, it's a draft, so then after our comments, you can continue working on it. And please note that Peter and the whole PowerBank team is available for any questions you might have. So yeah, I think it's a good time to stop here. The only thing we could give you is the feedback form, but let's send it to you by email, since some people needed to leave already, so we wouldn't get all the responses in any case. Is there something Peter, you would like to cover before closing?
No, it's just saying, like the example I gave about the application you are developing. Technology is very exciting. It's very easy to jump into the technology bandwagon. We have seen with the 1 laptop per child. I had first-hand experience for 4 years in application development in Coast Kenya. You get excited and forget about other things, and you focus on what you want to do. But I think the principles bring a very important opportunity, a guideline that helps you, even if you're not checking them, like checkbox, I've done 1 up to 9, but they remind you. If you keep them close to you, they remind you of things you need to be aware of, and don't get excited and jump into the technology bandwagon or forgetting all the other things and focusing on that, just the technology that and the solution you want to test. There are many other things around technology that would affect a rather good solution and make it useless if you don't put them into consideration, whether they are political, whether they are gender, whether they are culture, all those other aspects. Back to you, Mika.
Yeah, good points. And of course, it's good to be, we are sometimes very excited about the technology, and it does bring a lot of opportunities. That's a great thing about it. But then with these principles, they can be balanced. Now I gave you the link digitalprinciples.org that has lots of material, further reading if you like. So feel free to browse that. And then if you are writing any concepts, please submit the draft version to Peter by the end of this week, Friday, and then you'll get feedback and comments in the process. Otherwise, thanks a lot for joining. Thanks for the good feedback, and I hope you found this session useful for your work in general and the potential or possible concept. Any last comments or questions? Sante Sana, Ari, and everyone else with you there.
Is it? Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Yeah. I have wondered all the time while we've been working in Tanzania. I've been wondering the learning system there, which is based after primary education in English. I don't understand it still today. I don't understand why they do it that way. But my point is that Linux Torvalds gave us Linux system, and we have Ubuntu and Ubuntu existing. And Ubuntu was on the way to Swahili version, which never was done, which never was finished. And I wonder why.
That's a big question. Maybe we'll have a separate session on that. I don't know, unless Peter knows why it was not finished. Peter, you are muted.
Yeah, it's something to think about. But I was looking at Ali and Thea about the first question about Tanzanian education system.
Yeah, pedagogically, it doesn't make sense to switch to English so early. If people are talking their mother tongue, they should really learn the mother tongue first, build a good basis, and then switch to another language. But there's often a lot of pressure to switch to English as quickly as possible because of its linkages to global materials and stuff like that. But I guess Ari and others can comment on this.
Yeah, we can have a quick comment over here, both me and Thea. But well, this is all colonialism style, and for international careers, that is okay. But basically, as long as the quality of English is still rather poor in primary school, among primary school teachers, so it is difficult to catch up in secondary schools. That is for sure. However, Swahili and English are Tanzania's original languages, and we are also learning in Finland, we are learning Swedish, but not that much as they are learning English over here. But for the time being, if the teaching of English language would be in a very good quality in primary schools, I could see also that the secondary school English as a teaching language would be a good option, and it could lead then in an international career. But basically, when it is as it is now, if somebody would ask me that would Swahili or English be the secondary school teaching language, I would say Swahili.
Good. Thea, any final words before closing?
Yeah, so I think yeah, I think Azari has said already, like, yeah, the background of our education could be more strengthened, then we could get quality education background.
Now the audio is breaking a bit, so yeah. Thanks. We are almost switching to a completely different topic, so now it's time to thank everybody. Good to hear that, Laura, you got some new ideas your work. That's great, and see you in the future trainings. Have fun and have a good rest of the day.